Hey, Strangelings. I'm so sorry. You're probably wondering where the heck have you been? And to that, I have some explaining to do. So I'm going to explain a couple of things on where I've been, the hiatus episode that we are about to dive into today, and things to look forward to in the next couple of weeks. All right, so the hiatus. I had gone to VidCon, and keep in mind, this is like paranormal slash I talk about psychic mediumship. And little did I know, VidCon, well, actually, no, I should know this by now, so shame on me. But VidCon is such a draining event. It's amazing. If you have family and you love certain creators that you want to meet and they're going to be at VidCon, I think it's so worth going to meeting your favorite creator. But that being said, it's just a lot of energy. There's so many different creators there. There's brand people there, marketing people there, managers, there's panels going on in the space of social media, just so many people going on. And of course, fans and meeting their favorite creators and so on. So just every year that I've gone, I get so drained, you guys. And because I am medium, because I am a psychic, I feel energy I'm so attuned to the energy and always prepare myself before I go. But I feel like I could have done more. I'll admit that. And so it just, by the time it was done and over with, I was so drained. I was invited to the Meta office. I was invited to the YouTube office prior to VidCon actually starting. And then VidCon started on a Thursday, and I was just done. I was so over it, but I was just so, my energy was just so drained per se. And so anyway, that happened. Then the following weekend, I was just doing a lot of catching up. We had events going on. I had a psychic circle going on. Some of you guys know this, but I do psychic development stuff outside of online content creation and podcast. And also, I was on the Fluently Forward podcast. And if you guys love pop culture, you guys love blind items, all of that juicy stuff, you need to check out Shannon over on the Fluently Forward podcast. And she's amazing. I've been a long time listener and fan of her work. And so when she had reached out to me to be on her podcast, I was obviously more than excited to be part of that. So that was what happened. And unfortunately, I was very delayed in hosting the podcast. So I'm really sorry about that. However, I will say this. I'm excited for today's podcast episode. I have Vanessa. She is going to be the guest today, and I am so excited to have her on. She talks about Disney, some of the really inside scoop stuff with like tours that she has done. And I am a Disney girly. I love spooky stuff alongside Disney stuff. I'm in the car right now because I'm at the True Crime Podcast Festival. I'm going to be doing a panel with a couple of amazing people with Haunted Detective, Susto Podcast, and a Spooky Tales. I'm going to put all their stuff in the description. So anyway, we're going to be doing a panel on Sunday. By the time you listen to this, it's going to be out on a Monday. So yeah, that's really what's been going on. And I'm so sorry for that hiatus. But I also want you to let me know, how can I be better at communicating like updates for the podcast? Do you want me to post on Instagram, the YouTube community tab? Let me know your thoughts. And without further ado, let's get on with today's episode. Hi, my sweet strangerlings. Welcome to Mystic Mondays. And today we're going to be talking about all fun and spooky things such as Disney, urban legends, and we have a very special guest. So I'm going to hand it over to Vanessa. Vanessa, can you tell the audience a little bit about your background, your work, and all of that fun stuff?
Hi, I'm Vanessa. I'm a blogger and content creator. I've been blogging and working in social media for over 15 years now. I know I'm like a grandma in the blogging world. I started blogging in 2009, I believe, just as like a hobby and something to do to connect with people. And I just started, sharing when I moved to LA as kind of like a way to express myself and connect with people because I didn't really know anybody. And so I started blogging and sharing DIYs, my thoughts on film and TV, because I moved out here for film and TV. And I've been doing it ever since. I didn't dream I can turn it into a career. I never thought this would be a career, but almost 15 years later, here I am still doing it. And that's my story. Yeah.
That's amazing. So you started blogging in a time where I think Because I read this book. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Extremely Online by Taylor Lawrence. And she
Yes.
talked about like the mommy blogger era, like all the different types of blogging styles. So how did you get
Yes,
into like,
we're in the
yeah,
the OG beginning, starting it all, basically.
what specific blogging topics did you touch base on?
Well, I started so back in the day there was like MySpace, okay?
Yes.
And MySpace was kind of like the original blog. Like you had like a whole like kind of comment section and section that you can like, write your thoughts on your day and whatever you wanted to share. And that's kind of where I started from. And then I transitioned to like something called Blogger. And so I just used to like, blog about my daily life, the movie I saw, what I was working on, because I was working in the entertainment industry, spooky things, things that I loved, like products, that sort of thing. And I started like befriending other bloggers. And back in the day, you would get like a blog godmother, and she would like help you start your blog and like help you design your blog. And like we used to have little blog buttons that we would put on each other's blogs to like promote each other and things like it was like much more community based and everybody kind of helped each other back then. So that's kind of what I started out doing. And then it kind of transitioned more into like a lifestyle entertainment. It's more like kind of like a magazine type of blog where I interviewed celebrities and I would show DIYs, recipes, fashion, covering events, red carpets, kind of things like that.
I love that. Like, so you've definitely have seen so many different trends and topics touched based on the internet in terms of social media and connection. And I think that like, oh my God, MySpace, I think MySpace was such a iconic era. It was, I want to say that because MySpace was supposed to be like a community where you add your friends and stuff on
Mm-hmm.
MySpace, it was never meant to be like a public thing, but people made it a public thing. Like they would add whoever under the sun.
That top eight was like everything. If
Yes.
you weren't in somebody's top eight, you were no one, People would get angry. Like, how am I not in your top eight? Like people would peruse and like stalk people to see who was in the top eight, who had the most bling. And like we were full on like hackers. Like nobody taught us anything, but we knew how to hack and like add all this like code to our page to make it like bling out and music playing. And
Yeah, friendships were either made or lost with that top eight, for sure,
mm-hmm,
for sure.
mm-hmm.
So I want to transition a little bit into your backgrounds.
I'm Puerto Rican and Cuban, believe it or not. I
Ooh,
know.
I love that.
Full Boricua and Cubana, full. I was like, I know.
Uh,
I'm like, blue eyes, all that. I'm like, yeah. And I tell everybody, it's like, oh, I can't believe it. I'm like, have you seen Telemundo? I'm like, everybody looks like me on Telemundo. Everybody. It's like, how
Isn't
do
that
you
a
not know we
strange?
come in? It's so strange that people are like, oh my God, I can't believe you're Puerto Rican. I'm like, literally, like everybody has
Yeah.
blonde hair and blue eyes. Even if it's not natural, everybody has blonde hair and blue eyes on Telemundo.
It's so strange because like I think everyone expects Latinos to look like me, but like
Hmm.
I have a few cousins that look like you, and it's so strange to me because you're right, like the media in general, you'll always see more like light, fair-skinned Latinos with colored eyes, but you'll never see most like unless like if they look like me, they're like this the maid or the side
Hmm.
character.
Sad, but it's kind of disgusting. But yes, it's
Yeah.
true. All we've got
Yeah.
is J Lo, basically.
Actually, I love that you brought up JLo because I did a podcast. My friend and I did a podcast about her last year on this podcast, and the question was, "Is she a witch?" Because there's like rumors that she would do like witchcraft and all this stuff, and I'm like, I don't know. I mean, but the funny part about that, and I guess I'm going to ask you this question: what do you think about that? I feel like every Latino household, and I know every country is different, so that's why I ask like what your ethnicity is and like what is your understanding of witchcraft or brujeria, but I feel like most people have either like some superstition.
My
Really?
grandmother, full on brujeria, had her little hallway altar and everything. The little hallway that you don't go down because it looks creepy as f. My father's mother, Cuban side, yeah, full brujeria. And it would be so like weird and awkward because like, you know, my grandmother on my mother's side is like so religious, and like, you know, I had the confirmation, you know, the baptism, all that stuff, and my other grandma would come and she wouldn't even know how to do like the sign of the cross or anything, because you know that's not what she practices.
Yeah.
So yeah, she full on had all the santos and all that stuff. It gave me the creeps. But yeah, I was very, very familiar with it all growing up because she would be in there with her chicken bones and doing
Oh shit,
whatever.
chicken
She
bones.
would do the chicken bones and have the whole altar set up with the santos and bones hanging off of them and everything in her little
Whoa.
hallway of God knows whatever. And she would do, you know, friends would come over asking for like, you know, spells.
I'm gonna plug this in, you guys. So if anyone's interested in bone throwing or bone readings, my friend released a book called Bone Throwing. I'm gonna plug it in the description. I was gonna I just got the book, so it's so funny that you start talking about bone
The
readings.
bones.
I have a friend who he just rolled out with a book. I believe his grandmother is Cuban too.
Yep.
So
It's
fascinating
it's
that
it's
you
big with the Cuban culture.
it's so funny because I have my family is very similar set up in a way of like my mom's side of the family. I think they're more open to brujeria or just like more of that more like spiritual indigenous roots
Mm-hmm.
practice or like the Catholic folklore magic. Whereas like I think like
Mm-hmm.
my dad's side of the family, they're very conservative religious in terms of like traditional Catholic. But it's so funny because mi
Mm-hmm.
tío, my uncle, he has this bread that's been blessed by a priest and it's an offering to my grandmother. And he's like, it will never rot. It'll never grow fungus. And it's been there for like forever. And I'm like, that's not brujeria. Like,
Exactly.
okay, Theo, that's brujeria, but okay.
My grandmother on my mother's side is the only one who was like super religious because my mother was all about the horror and the paranormal, and that's kind of where I got into it from her because she was just, you know, showing me things I probably shouldn't have seen when I was a
Yeah.
child. You know, we would be like watching Elvira and
Ooh.
like Unsolved Mysteries and everything under the sun that you could think
Oh,
of. I
I
was already
loved.
watching by the time I was like 5, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it kind of my whole thing with the paranormal and everything kind of started there, but honestly, the main thing that like triggered my whole thing with the paranormal was I grew up in a haunted AF apartments. Like the apartment up until I was 12 was haunted like nobody's business, and also I lost my best friend when I was 10 years old.
Oh, I'm
So
so
those
sorry
two
about that.
things combined, thank you, um like just kind of triggered my fascination with like the paranormal and things like that. But some examples, I mean, we had the doors opening by themselves, we had the shadow figures, like
Mm.
hopefully I don't tear up and start talking because it's like traumatizing, you know, like
Oh, it's
every
okay.
time
Yeah.
before bed, like a shadow figure would come in and like stand by my bed and like just watch me like I as I was sleeping. So I would like face the wall and like keep my back towards it because that's like the only way I could go to sleep. And like the way I knew it was a shadow figure because I used to sleep with the TV on to have some light, you know? And I
Yes.
still sleep with the TV on to this day. And I would see it like black out the TV. So that's how I would know like somebody's in the room kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And I also had a dog, and he would start like growling. And I mean, my poor dog, may he rest in peace. But
Yeah.
throughout the night, I would hear him battling stuff on the floor. And I'm like, it would almost sound like my closet door would open. And it almost sounds like and this is like horrifying, right? My
Yeah.
toys, it sounded like my toys were walking out of my closet. Like, that's
Wow.
what it sounded like. Something was like on the floor, and then I would hear like my dog like start like growling and like fighting something. And in the morning,
Yeah.
I would come in like looking what was he like fighting the whole night basically, and I couldn't ever find anything like the craziest thing. And he would like bark at the walls, bark at corners, and the creepiest thing was. Have you ever seen the movie like What Lies Beneath?
Sounds awfully familiar.
With Michelle Pfeiffer and like the Harrison Ford.
Oh gosh, that sounds so familiar. I think I might have seen it because it sounds so. You're saying
Okay.
Michelle. I'm okay, Michelle Pfeiffer.
And
Um,
when you know, like in the mirror, and it's like it says like the things in the mirror, like it's what lies beneath, and like she basically,
yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
remember? And like she comes out of the bathroom, she sees like all the stuff, and like I would deal with that every time I showered. Like I would make sure the mirror was perfectly clean, and I would come out and there would be handprints in the mirror in the steam, and like words like "help me," "hello," all kinds of stuff in the mirror, and I'd just be like,
Uh-uh.
"I'm not dealing with this today," you know. And then we used to have one of those like TV dinner tables, like those little fold out like wooden tables that you would, just for a single person kind of thing. One like flew across the room one day. I was just like, I'm so done with this apartment.
Mhm.
And I think it stemmed from because I grew up in Washington Heights and the projects. And in the stairwell
Wait,
where
sorry.
my
You said Washington Heights?
New
Oh,
York,
New York.
in the
Sorry, sorry.
Heights.
I was like, wait, where? I was like, I've never heard of that.
Sorry.
Where is that? Okay, New
Washington
York.
Heights is in New York. Yeah, it's like all the way upper Manhattan, like going all the way uptown, like past
Oh my
Harlem, like
God.
Spanish past there.
Okay,
Yeah.
first New York
So,
city story because I have not heard anyone talk about like spooky New York stuff. So I'm
oh
so
my God.
yeah.
Yeah. No, the apartments are haunted in New York. I mean, hello, they've been there for like hundreds of years. But I feel like this apartment and this building was haunted because in the stairwell, I lived on the seventh floor. It was like a 14-floor building. And on the seventh floor, a guy, you know, took his own life in the
Mm.
stairwell. And I used to take the stairs, so I feel like he followed me home. And
Oh.
then another guy got thrown off the roof. And as I was coming downstairs just to go to school, boom, I stumbled on his body in the ramp for like the wheelchair access ramp. And I
Yeah.
was like, I feel like he followed me home. So I feel like that's how they made their way to my apartment, kind of a thing. And I feel like they're the ones that were haunting the building.
Oh
So,
my gosh. Okay, so we have a couple things to unpack here with that.
yeah.
So that thank you for sharing that. That gave me chills. I think there are a couple things here, right? The first thing that I love that you talked about or you pointed out that your hauntings was traumatic. And I think a lot of people,
So
especially like
traumatic.
yeah, and I think like I've had my audience in particular, like some of them, not all of them, but some of them, stumble upon my videos for the first time and they think it's fun and entertaining and it's ghost stories, but for some
No,
of us, it's a reality. It's traumatic.
it
And
is.
yeah,
You'll live with it forever, essentially.
yeah, it
And it
affects
changes
you.
you. It kind of opens up something. So like everybody's always saying like I'm like an empath, or I have like a thing where I can kind of like go into the location and I get like visions sometimes of like
Mhm.
something that happened there. Like I can just sense what happened there, and it often turns out to be like right. Like it's really
Yeah.
weird. Like I can tell you another story. I don't know if you want me to give you an
Yeah, well,
example.
let's unpack this couple things, and we
Go
can
ahead.
get
Go ahead.
into your
Yeah, yeah,
your psychic, your energy reads and stuff.
yeah.
But I think the second thing too, with like trauma, and then what you were saying about the buildings and being in New York and certain places, I think with why I specifically wanted more people and a diversity inclusivity on this podcast is because a lot of us don't live in like the very nice parts. Sometimes we live in very harsh parts of the United States, like you
Hmm.
just said, like the part where you were living. It's probably not the best for everybody, right? Or probably they probably don't want to live there. I don't know. But the point of the matter is that I think you in particular, why it's so important, and I always say this in the paranormal space, I think all of us, Latinos or non-Latinos, but just marginalized communities, when we grow up in neighborhoods that are not the best, we ourselves, especially as sensitives, can feel and tell these stories in the best way. Whereas like somebody
Hmm.
that is like maybe from a different class or different race may not resonate with these hauntings in the same way, I feel like. And I'll give
Hmm.
you an example. Like when my husband and I went to Arizona, he's white, and he was like, it was different energy for him than for me. For me, I was like,
Hmm.
they don't like me here.
Yeah,
They don't want me here.
exactly. Exactly.
And so I think when you were saying that you are an empath and you were in this apartment building, you're right. I think only you, like, they knew that, like, okay, she could understand this. So we're going to see
Hmm.
if she can react or can sense that we're here. And that's what happened.
Hmm.
So that's fascinating that you shared that story. I just wanted to point that out because literally, like, I don't think anybody else maybe somebody else could have, but you were that person that was open enough to experience that and be like, no, no, thank you. No,
Yeah,
thank you.
whether
It's
you
something.
or not, they can sense like who's
Mm,
open and who they can like, oh, she can see, she can feel, like they can immediately sense it and latch on. If you're not
yeah.
careful, they'll latch on to you forever, kind of a thing.
Yeah,
So,
well, they just can definitely jump back and forth and things like that nature.
mhm.
But I wanted to talk about how you said you've been told that you're an empath. So, I love that because one of the ways that I tapped into spiritualism. So I consider myself a spiritualist, an
Mhm.
occultist, and I've been doing this for over 10 years now. It's crazy to even, I think we're going up to
Time
14.
flies.
Yeah, like 14 years actually looking. I kept saying 10, but I'm like, no, it's actually 14 years and more. I really
Exactly. It
like
always feels, I keep saying the same thing for like blogging, but I'm like, oh, it's been like 15 years actually.
yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I first was realizing that I had was I was an empath. Like I would feel people's emotions, but there's
Hmm.
different levels of empaths too. There's ones that like they are really good at feeling people's emotions, and then there's ones that feel like energy of that place.
Hmm.
Where do you think you fall into?
I think I feel like both. Like I can sense like I'm like, oh, like if I'm talking to somebody, especially like just doing like I'm like, oh, something's going on there. You know what I mean? I can sense like this is not going to go the way we want it to go, or
Yeah.
but I also have that thing where like especially if it's like a haunted place, like I can go to a place and be like, oh, something happened there and like research it after and be like, oh, exactly what I like saw in my head happened there. Like one example I was going to give was I went to Penn State my first year of college, then I transferred to NYU, and I was located in Altoona, Pennsylvania. And there's a mansion called Baker's Mansion there that is super haunted. You could look it up. um,
Okay.
and I don't know what possessed. I'm like, we're minorities. We shouldn't be going in the dark to a haunted mansion.
Yeah.
We should know better, going to a mansion in the middle of the night, while we know it's super haunted kind of a thing. And as soon as I got out of the car, I looked up and I saw a woman holding like a wedding dress looking angry and in like the second floor window of the mansion. I was like, I think there's somebody home and like we're not gonna go inside or try to get inside this place. And then there was like it almost looked like a storm shed, but like built into the side of a hill, like a hobbit house, kind of a thing. But
Oh.
it was like a metal door built into the side. And I was like, there's bodies in there. Like there are
Oh.
bodies in there. And I was like, we need to get out of here. And so we got out because I was like, I'm not staying here like 1 second more because I was just like full on having like the heebie jeebies.
Yeah.
And so we got out and I looked up afterwards and it turns out there was a daughter, like Anna Baker, who was like the daughter there. And she wanted to marry like the love of her life, and she was never permitted because they thought he wasn't like good enough for her. So out of
Yeah.
spite, she never got married. But I guess like the Preservation Society or something like took another prominent like family's daughter's wedding dress and put it in the house. And so apparently she goes around taking the wedding dress and dragging it around the house because she's so mad that it's there that, somebody else got married and they had the audacity to bring the dress into this house when she never got married. So I'm
That
like,
is
I
messed
feel like
up.
that was her in the window with the wedding dress in her hand about to go drag it. And I like saw her like before she was going to do it.
Wait,
And
did she ever get
then
married?
she never got married. Like out of spite, she was like, if you won't let me marry whoever, I want to get married, she never got married, like out of spite to like continue the
Oh,
family or anything. She died
interesting.
in the house, like alone, bitter, angry because she never got married. But
But
they put,
imagine.
yeah, but they put somebody else's wedding dress from like another prominent family inside the house where she died. So she's
Yeah.
angry and like drags the dress around the house. So, and then the thing
Oh,
in the side was actually a refrigerator, and they used to store the bodies in there until the ground thawed, keep everything cold. And since it was so cold and the ground was so hard, they couldn't like bury bodies, so they would keep them in the refrigerator. And that's when I had saw. I was like, there's bodies in there, and I confirmed it afterward that there were bodies in there at
that is
some point in
crazy.
time. Yeah. So that's like the craziest story that I have.
I just did a video on this where like uh why people feel like basements are very freaky. And there was a comment that I was like, oh my God, that's so true. In the North, like in New York, the East Coast, especially, well, I would say also the Midwest, the basements are just airy, right? And I think it's
Hmm.
because what you just said, it's like if you couldn't afford to put something outside of your home, the basement was the place that you would put the bodies in during winter because the soil was just so hard to like dig through. So
And it's
interesting you're
cold
bringing.
down there.
It's
It would
cold
be
down
cold.
there.
It's the coldest area, and they would keep them down there just until.
So that's why I think basements are freaky, but also like going back to your story about the closets. So I think the reason why closets are also freaky for people, and I remember a while ago I was having a discussion with my mentor about this, is that like there are spaces in a home that are less inhabited, right? Like the attic is one of
Hmm.
them. The
Hmm.
closet has belongings in it, but you're
Hmm.
not like in your closet just hanging out. So it doesn't have your present energy in that closet. Just has belongings of
Hmm.
people. And so I think that's why closets also are very freaky because it's just remnants and dust and that's not everyone like spends time cleaning their closet either. So like it has
Exactly.
a remnants of the past and other
Yep.
people and so it feels like oh okay I can live here in this closet. So people also
Hmm.
find those freaky, not the walk-in closets but like the ones that you like open and it has like it's just enough space for your
I
clothes.
mean, some of those closets even have little like rooms that like people used to crawl in, like crawl spaces inside of them too. So
Yes.
that
Yes.
also stores energies in those closets too, because there's always like a room within a room sometimes in closets that you don't know what happened
Absolutely.
in those rooms.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, thank you. I know
Hmm.
like I love that we're like just talking about all of this fun, eerie things of and that you're from the New
Exactly.
York side. So I'm like, okay, this fits exactly what I just talked about.
Hmm.
um
So many haunted places in New York.
Oh my God, I'll have to hit you up for more of those. I had another thing
Hmm.
too. I saw that like on top of like, blogging and your work that you've done online, when I love the aesthetic of your Instagram, it's just so like beautifully colored, so vibrant. It's
Thank
very
you.
thematic and also like I love that you do Disney stuff. I'm a Disney person. Exhibit
Huge
behind me.
Disney. Exactly.
Uh,
Yay, Mickey.
I love Disney. I love that it's becoming more common conversation of people who love Disney. And I guess like combining that with spooky stuff. Like there's Bats Day at Disneyland. Have you been to that?
No, I haven't, but I've heard of it. I've heard of it.
It looks really fun.
It does.
But there's just like so many things. And also, of course, like with Disneyland and having like the Oogie Boogie Bash. What's the other one? I haven't been to the other one yet. But it's the Halloween one theme too.
Mickey's Halloween Bash or something like that, the one in Walt Disney World. Yeah. The
Yes, they
Mickey's
just
spooky party or something like that. I forgot what it's
something
called.
like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Have you been to any of those?
I have been to all the ones at Disneyland, like the Oogie Boogie Bash. It used to be like Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween and things like that. I used to go to all of those. I've been to all those things. When I was a kid, my mom used to take me to Disney World because when you grow up on the
Oh,
East Coast, you go to Disney World because we don't
yeah.
have to. You gotta fly to Florida and go to Disney World. But yeah, she would go because back in the day they used to have good deals.
Oh,
And
yeah.
like especially for like American Express card members, apparently they would have like crazy packages. So we would go every year, literally around the holidays, ringing the new year at Disney World. So we would go to all the parks and literally eat at every single restaurant. Like,
Really?
yeah, that was like, she'd charge it up, Even
Yeah.
though we're living in the projects, we're at Disney World every year.
I mean, it's kind of like I'm like me and my family. We're gonna go to
It's like make
Disneyland,
it
and
make sense, but whatever. We're going to Disneyland. We're going to Disney World every year. Yeah, we would go every year. So I kind of my love of Disney just grew from that kind of a thing
oh,
because
I love that.
just always going to Disney World every year, and then back then we had the Disney afternoon,
Oh,
and I was there. I hope this doesn't date me, but like day one since Disney Channel launched, I was there
ooh,
like glued to my TV, like waiting for Disney Channel to come on. It was like, we're gonna have a channel, So
yes.
yeah, just since a young age, I've just always loved Disney to the point that I thought I was gonna be an animator,
Oh my God,
and
I
I
wanted to be an
actually
animator.
I was like, I'm gonna be an animator because then like at Disney World they used to have like a section where you can go and like be taught by the animators. and they would like, you would sit there and you would like paint a cell with them and things like that, and then you could bring your own little kit home and things. And I would like come home from Disney World like, I'm painting cells, I'm gonna do my own animation and things. So I grew up like totally, I was like, I'm gonna be an animator, I'm gonna be a Disney animator, I'm gonna make like the best animated film like Aladdin and like, you
Yes.
know. And so I transferred from Penn State to NYU to study animation, and I studied with somebody named John Kingmaker. He actually wrote the book, The Nine Old Men and the Art of Disney Animation. And it's called Walt Disney's Nine Old Men. And yeah, he was friends
Oh,
with like the original OG like Disney animators, and
that's amazing.
taught me how to do like the old Disney animation and things like that. But then I like transferred and segued into film and TV. But I just always kept that love of animation. But I had gone the
Yeah.
full length, even to college, to study animation.
That's amazing. Yeah, I remember being a kid and I loved the OG Disney classics. Like just something about the animation is what drew me in. It was very whimsical, and I loved also anime, but I wanted to be an animator. And even now I think I have such a soft spot for animators, and even seeing some of the animations. Like that's why I loved Princess Tiana, because I was like, "Oh my God, you we're seeing this like for the first time in a long, long time." Um
Exactly.
that
And
isn't like
Enchanted, when Enchanted came out, it was like, oh my God, it's been so long since we had like
yes.
traditional animation.
Yeah, and I always have a soft spot for that, and I think it's a lost art and enthusiasm for it too, because I think people want to see more of like the 3D animations, which is great. Like I don't mind them, but I will always have a soft spot for the
The
classical OG stuff.
traditional, yeah. I was like, I miss it. I miss all those animations, and but I just saw Inside Out too, and it was amazing. So highly
Yes, I haven't
recommend
seen
it.
that.
You got to see it.
I need to see it.
Bring tissues. You will.
Oh.
The way they capture anxiety, it's like perfection,
Oh,
basically.
I love that. Okay, I need to
Yeah,
check it out.
definitely.
But speaking of Disney, I mean, I think that's so amazing that you grew up with Disney World. I've never been to Disney World. I will admit that. I've never been to Disney World. I've only been in Disneyland. I was born in LA. Like most of my
Hmm.
childhood is Disneyland. And whenever
Well,
we're
you're
doing
lucky. I mean, I
yeah.
always say everybody who grew up here and like who is here, like you guys are all lucky. You can like drive within like, short distance to
Yes.
Universal, Disney, Lego. Like you have all the things within like driving. It was like we have to fly to get to
Oh yeah.
anything. I mean, we have like Six Flags or like Sesame Place. We can drive
Oh,
to Hershey Park. That's about
oh my
it.
gosh.
But yeah, you have to fly everywhere on the East Coast. So here, you guys are lucky that you can go.
It's true. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
true. Like
I feel
I
like I
never
feel
realized it until I
spoiled.
left.
Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't realize until I left that I was like, "Oh my God, I was kind of spoiled with theme parks living in
yeah,
LA."
yeah.
um, but I wanted to talk about like the urban legends surrounding the Disney parks, because whenever I look into like the hauntedness of either Disney World or Disneyland, like sometimes I think people get them confused a little bit and it's hard to
Hmm.
distinguish it. But I truly think both are equally haunted, because you got to think about it, right? Like we just literally talked about all the nostalgia and like why it was our happy place. Like, you live in a low income household, and then going to Disneyland, it is as an escapism. And I think I've always held on to that portion of why I love the
Hmm.
theme parks.
Hmm.
Um, and for other people, it just means so many other things as well. And to hear that, like, people have been throwing ashes,
I was
like,
gonna say, I was like, the amount of people who's thrown ashes there, like you wouldn't believe the amount of people who sneak ashes in and throw them at
yes,
Disneyland or Disney World. So yeah, I wouldn't be
yeah,
surprised how haunted like Disneyland. And I hear the stories all the time about how haunted Disneyland's and how haunted like, Walt Disney World is, because then we also don't hear about all the crazy things that have happened. A lot of people get eaten, apparently, allegedly, conspiracy,
yeah.
by alligators at Disney World.
Wait, what?
Yes, yes. Look it up. Kids getting eaten at Disney World by alligators because they get into the water. Like you'll be on a ride and an alligator will just come on out. Like
Oh my gosh.
especially like because a lot of the resorts, like the hotels that you stay in, are like on the water, like are on water, and alligators get in there and snatch people up. left and right.
That is
But you don't
crazy.
hear about it that often because the Disney gods will shut it up really fast.
Oh yeah, I
So God
bet.
knows how much, how many people have been snatched up by gators at Disney World. Um, but yeah, and then that on top of the ashes of people being scattered at all the parks, I'm not surprised if they're all haunted.
No, yeah, and you just made me think of also like the Disney cruise. Like, you know how like the Disney cruise has a lot of shady business going on. I'm gonna say allegedly, but
Allegedly. Allegedly.
allegedly, we're using a lot allegedly now. Speaking to Disney,
Exactly. Allegedly.
allegedly. But like for example, if I look at like Disney cruise, if I Google just alone Disney cruise crimes, the first thing that
So
comes up
many.
on USA Today, it says law enforcement found sexually explicit pictures and videos of minors, and there wasn't there like a person that went missing at one of the Disney cruises as well, or something like that. Um,
There's lots of kids who have gone missing, allegedly. Um, Alleged rumors of like human trafficking. Um, a lot
y-
of crazy things. People falling off the boats and
yes, like here
things
I'll give
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give you an example too, because I even like looked it up. So Disney cruise missing child cases. So in 2011, British crew member Rebecca, I'm gonna botch up her last name. Sorry guys, Rebecca Coram went missing from the Disney Wonder cruise ship on March 22nd, and that's not the first. There are many other ones that you guys can look up. I'm wondering, they have to. There has to be a documentary. I don't know if there's a documentary, but there has to be.
There has not been. There has not. I've seen like plenty of like segments about things, but I've never seen a documentary. I've never seen anybody do anything about it. So,
Yeah. And even here, like, there's a whole Reddit thread too. Like, in case you want to know what happens to when your child goes missing, but they had to delete the thread, and it had over like 100 upvotes. So there's clearly things that like Disney, allegedly Disney, or it seems like Disney tries to cover or PR move a lot of these cases. Now, I don't know. I mean, it's a theme park. There's several people there, so I can see why a lot of things would, not everything is perfect, right? Like it's
yeah.
something bound is to happen, but it's
Hmm.
interesting, right? Because we talked about like how Disney can be a happy place, but it's also can be a very tragic. What's the most common Disney urban legend aside from the alligators? What any of the parks that or rides that you have heard is like the most haunted at Disney World?
At Disney World, I haven't heard a lot of the things at Disney World. I've heard more about Disneyland.
Oh, okay.
So I know I've also had my own scary or
Okay.
spooky experience at
Well, okay.
Disneyland.
Well, the one that I've
So
heard of, like at least when I look it up, it's always the Small World ride is haunted in Disney World, and I'm
is that
like,
right?
oh,
I was gonna say that. I was like, it's either Small World or Haunted Mansion
yes,
because
Haunted Mansion.
they give the vibes. Like when I would never want to go on them rides. Like I never when I was at Disney World, like I would never go on it. Like
Oh,
never.
really?
Yeah,
You just
I
felt the
never wanted
vibe.
to. Yeah, I felt the vibes. I was like, I would never want to go on that. I would go on like Peter Pan. I would go on. I would literally go on everything but those rides. I would go to
Oh my
Haunted
god.
Mansion, but I would always feel like, oh well, maybe that was just because it's Haunted Mansion.
So for me, when I was a kid, I remember had been like 5 or something like that, and I remember this day because I was like crying my eyes off. We decided to do the Haunted Mansion ride, and I was a scaredy cat as a kid, and it was my sister, her ex boyfriend, well, her boyfriend at the time, and like he was holding on to me because I loved her boyfriend. He was really good with kids. He had a little kid sister, so I think that's probably why. But I was like, oh my god, hold me, and I was crying because I did not want to do the Haunted Mansion ride, and I felt so scared. But sometimes I'm like, maybe it's because like I was just a scaredy cat. But then
Mm-hmm.
like later on, I would find out that the Haunted Mansion is one of the most like haunted rides, like really haunted rides, like not just
At
like
Disneyland.
theatrical.
Yeah,
Yeah, at
yeah.
Disneyland. And I'll share the story with this. So this is a legend for the viewers. The Haunted Mansion attractions, there are various Haunted Mansion attractions at various theme parks throughout Disney. But the one that we're going to be talking about is the one in Disneyland. So this one allegedly is a spirit named George who haunts the Disneyland version, and and the ghostly bride in the attic scene. That's what they say. There are various stories
Hmm.
shared by Disney fans and employees over the years, but there is no official confirmation. So, again, just take that with a grain of salt. But then the
Yeah.
second one that comes up
Disneyland,
is,
California. Hmm.
yeah. And the second one is Walt Disney's apartment. I know we talked about this off the record, but and I have a story to follow up with this, you guys, too, because I went to D23 years back, and the person that does the collection talked about this place. So bear with me with this. So Disneyland's apartment. So Walt Disney had an apartment above the fire station on Main Street in Disneyland, and it is believed that the lamp is left on to honor his memory, and some claim to see the light turn on and off. And also there's a source, there are sources about this as well, and even like the collection, I forgot her name already, but she keeps like the files. She's part of like the president or something like that, that is in charge of the archives.
The Disney
And
Archives, yeah.
yeah, the
Hmm.
Disney archives. And she had so okay, if you guys ever go to D23, I think D23 is happening this year, but if she happens to do a panel, go to her panel because she has spooky paranormal stories. Like I was
I love
living
her.
for
Yeah,
it.
I've met her a few times. I'm trying to
Oh,
remember her
really?
name. She's like over a little. She has
Yeah.
curly hair. Yeah,
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 I'll probably plug it in if I find it.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but she has she's talked about how like the apartment is haunted and how like, well, I'll just say allegedly because I don't want to like, I don't know, speak. I'm not
I'll
speaking
say
on
it
behalf.
is,
Doesn't
okay?
yeah,
I won't say allegedly. I've
yeah,
seen
because you
it.
have a story
I've
for it.
seen the things, okay?
Yeah, but you know what's interesting though is that like, so she talked about that, and the other thing we just touched base on is the haunted mansion.
Mhm,
So she talked about that being haunted, but then also in, I think, the apartment or in the archives, they have the original design of the haunted mansion. It was supposed to be a lot scarier than what we see today, and I think like the inspiration was from Japan, but we weren't allowed
mhm,
to take photos. It looks scary, but again, if you guys go to D23, please check out her panel because she has so many good stories and things to see. But
mhm.
anyway, you have a scary story or spooky story regarding the Disney apartment. Do you want to share?
Sure. So I got invited to like cover. It was like the most insane event. Like we got invited to Disney World, Disneyland for a game coming out called Epic Mickey 2. And they did a whole like day where they took us to Walt's apartments, like behind the scenes, took us like all over the place where Walt would go. We went to Club 33. It was just like insane. We went to the Disney apartment. We went all over the place, basically all the places at Disneyland. And so we went into the apartment and like they were telling us about
No
how it was
way.
haunted and like all this stuff and like to prove the point of it being haunted, the person was like, watch, I'm going to turn out the light. Okay. And so he turned out the lamp in the window and he's like, you're going to see, and don't sit in the chair because Walt will get pissed off. Basically, if you sit in the chair and somebody like was going to like touch it and like it kind of like moved. And we were like, okay, don't touch the chair. And so like we all were like, okay, it's time to go. Like we don't want to get Walt upset. And so the guy was like, watch, I'm going to turn off the light. He turned off the light and we all went out. Everybody, he locked the door behind. Nobody was in there. We went out and we all stood like in front because it's like right over the fire station. And you could see the lamp in the window right above the fire station. And all of a sudden, boop, it came back on.
That's,
Nobody
oh my
was in
God.
there. We're like, oh my God, you know,
I
it's like
love
he wants
that.
it on.
Well, first of all, I'm jealous that you got to go in there, but I love that you have a story. That is
Yeah,
amazing.
because
That
it's
is
supposed
amazing.
to symbolize every time it was on, he was home. So it symbolizes that he's there. So every time he turns about, it's like, I'm here, you know? So he wants you to know he's there. And if you turn it off, he's like, no, I'm
No,
here,
leave it
you
on.
know? Exactly. So, you
I
know, and
love
they
that.
say they also see him like walking down Main Street, like going to the apartment too.
You know what? I could believe that. I feel like obviously, like if you were Walt Disney, where would I haunt and want to stay forever? Disneyland. If you know, like
Hmm.
that's where I would stay. Like
He
makes
spent
sense.
so much time there. Like he would sleep in that apartment. Like, and it was like the tiniest little place. Like I was like, how could he stay here? With his wife too would stay there with him, and it was like the
Oh,
smallest place. And apparently, the apartment, the Dream Suite that's over like Pirates, that was going to be his new apartment, but it never. He died before it could be finished.
Oh my god! You know,
So,
so I was gonna bring up the Pirates of the Caribbean ride,
hmm
because that's my favorite ride, but it's also said to be haunted. And if you're saying that that's where the other part was supposed to be, like, okay, I'm probably reaching you guys, but I'm like, could it be that he's also haunting the Pirates of the Caribbean ride?
probably, yeah, because
Probably.
he never got to see his apartment because like he had the like he designed it and everything, and that's what the apartment I believe is designed after was his designs for the way he wanted the apartment to be.
Oh my
So,
gosh!
and he
I
wanted it
wonder.
there because it's like right next to Club 33 where he was like entertaining people and things like that. So he can not have to walk across the park to get to his apartment. So,
Oh my gosh. Well,
yeah.
Club 33 is also haunted, but I didn't add it on here. But people have also claimed that that is haunted. I've never been to Club 33. Have you? Do you have like a Club 33?
I don't have a membership, but excuse me. Um, at that event and a lot of events for Disney, like they've taken us to Club 33. So I will say it's the best place I've ever eaten at Disneyland. It is the best place to eat. Like the second best would be comparable to it would be like the Blue Bayou
Oh,
because you
yes.
can eat at the, inside the basically it feels like you're eating inside Pirates of the Caribbean.
I want to do that so bad because every time I'm in the ride, I'm like, how are these people getting in here? And everyone tells me when we're in the ride.
It's the Blue Bayou. Oh my god! And their food is like comparable to like the food at kind of comparable to Club 33 because it's
Oh,
really
okay.
good. Yeah,
That's good to know.
expensive food. Yeah.
So for those people that are not aware, I mean, we touched base on it already, but the Pirates of the Caribbean ride is haunted, and this is like the rumors around it for the audience. So it's rumored that there's a ghostly apparition of a pirate that can be seen within the ride, especially near the area where there's like the skeleton is lying on top of the bed of treasure. Oh, okay, I've seen that. Yeah, I know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And there's reports of this ghostly figure that have circulated among Disneyland guests and employees. So, yes, but I've also heard that the part like the towards the end of the ride where there's like the bird at the very
hmm
end, that people have thrown ashes there. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but like allegedly people thrown
Well,
ashes or something.
first, that skeleton that is sitting on top of the gold pile and has like the crown and all that, that's a real skeleton. Number
Is it?
one, it's a real skeleton.
Wait, what?
Who knows whose body it is, but it's a real skeleton. They
What?
told us on the tour. They're like, yeah, that's a real skeleton in there.
So the
Yeah, you
tour
can
told you
buy.
this.
Yeah, the tour told us it was a real skeleton. That's the only one that's real, but that one is real,
Okay,
and
I'm gonna
he's
have to if I go to
he's been hanging out
D23.
there. So I think that's who's haunting the pirates. Right? Is
That
that
makes
guy?
sense.
I'm like, why would you have a real skeleton? But
Yeah,
sometimes,
that's interesting. And like
yeah.
they never thought to like, okay, we're just gonna replace it to be more like.
I mean, they did. I mean, they did that all the way into like the 80s. I mean, like Poltergeist, they had real skeletons and Poltergeist in the pool with
Mm-hmm.
her, like real skeletons. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
why anybody thought that was a good idea, but real skeletons.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, I'm sure that they probably also scattered ashes in there as well. But I think the ghost in there is probably the skeleton guy.
Okay. Yeah, I can believe that.
100%.
I could believe that. I could believe that because I think that like, it's funny because like I as a kid that even now it's still one of my favorite rides. It always has been. And it's just so happens that that happens to be like there's a lot of eerie things associated to that ride like the
hmm
skeleton, maybe the ashes are being thrown by where the like the at the end of the ride,
hmm
Walt Disney wanted to build his apartments near there. I'm like, oh my god, of course, of course.
So many things. And there's another story about a little girl that's seen walking around the park and inside where the lockers are. Like I've seen
Oh.
so many stories of cast members or just people going to the park and be like seeing a little girl inside where the lockers are and be like, "Hey, are you lost? Like, do you need help or something?" And like she just stands there like looking at them. And like they go to like look for somebody and they come back and she's gone. Like and she's been seen like all around the parks. And also she's been seen, I think, with the male ghost coming out of the haunted mansion. And I think
Oh.
like there's like some kind of like security cam footage that I saw, and like you can see like two like a little mist figure and like a large mist figure, and they're like walking out of the
Oh my
haunted
gosh.
mansion. Yeah, so everybody says it's like them two walking around the park. Yeah, and nobody knows where this
Interesting.
little girl came from. So
You
she
know
could
what's interesting?
be one of the
Yeah, she,
scattered ashes or something. Who knows? But
who
yeah, she
knows?
just
Yeah.
started appearing. Yeah,
Well, I remember I think it was,
allegedly.
yeah, allegedly. Yeah, allegedly.
Allegedly, everything allegedly.
Yeah, everything is alleged, guys.
Everything alleged.
But a couple years ago, I didn't live here yet, but I was transitioning into moving back out here. But for my birthday, we had gone to Disneyland, and I remember that like, because you know how like in the month of October, well, they always do the fireworks, but that they have like the spooky fireworks stuff.
Hmm.
So I decided not to do the fireworks. I was like, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna go to like a ride that I feel like is very eerie, which it's a small world is the one that I feel like is very eerie.
So eerie.
S-
So eerie.
Uh, yeah. So my husband and I went on that ride together. We're the only ones on that ride. The boat in front of us was empty. The boat behind us. So I brought my pack of tarot cards, and I started like doing a read on the room and stuff like that. And we picked up a little boy, and we kept shuffling it. And every time it was like this little boy. Like it was weird how like we would do that. And I never posted that footage. I was like, okay, what do you want to tell us? And I think it just wanted us to know that he was there. And I'm gonna have to look through the footage, but I never posted it. And then I posted another video though, and I know this one did get some like people that were upset about it, but I brought paranormal equipment on a different occasion, but I went again on the ride when no one was there. We always manage to get it when no one's on the and
Yeah.
we brought the equipment, and I know that like it's kind of hard to validate that because with equipment you want to have all the electricity off in order to
Yeah.
it not be polluted.
Hmm.
Um and but anyway, there's a spot where like you get to the eastern part of the world, I think it was, and that's where it just goes off a lot. And I don't know if it's the
Well,
equipment or not.
allegedly somebody hung themselves in It's a Small World. I don't know if you ever heard
Yeah,
that. And
I
they're
have.
like pictures. Have you seen the picture? Like,
Oh no, no, I have
yeah,
not.
like people took pictures of like you see the little person hanging up
Oh
there. Yeah, like because people were like
no.
literally on this ride and they just started snapping pictures. Yeah,
Oh
but
yeah,
I
no,
think it was
that's
like in the 90s or whatever. And like the pictures are on there, and I was like, oh my God, what is happening? Like, and yeah, apparently like people were on the ride and they, were going up, and like one kid was like, oh, what's that? And it was somebody hanging from like
oh no, that's so
It's a Small
tragic.
World, allegedly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised
Yo, no, yeah,
catching
like
things
it's
there.
yeah, but I just don't know where that happened either, and like
Yeah, there's
what
no
part of the
like
ride.
location on where the ride was. I don't, or at least I can't remember, but I'm sure if you like Google it, somebody was like, it was at this
Yeah,
station, but
but
I have no idea.
yeah, I mean, like I think with the equipment, it's hard to discern that to be honest. Like, so I always just like disregarded that, but the tarot one always did kind of like that one was more validation for me.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think that like if people want to experience the spookiness of Disney, we touched a lot of good places throughout the theme park. Um, but with that being said, I know I mentioned what was my favorite ride. What's your favorite ride?
I have to say it's Star Tours.
Oh
Um,
yes.
my
Hmm.
goal in life was to be the rebel, the rebel spy, and it happened. And I was like the best day of my life, not the birth of my son, but the best. I was the rebel spy. Like I was so happy. I like cried. I was like, oh my god. And it only happened because like it was like an event for like a movie premiere that we got to go to, and like they closed Tomorrowland for us, so we got to go in there. It was like me and like my husband, and, like one other person in there, and I was like, I want to be the rebel spy. And then they gave me the rebel spy because I was like, yes. And then I went and bought the T-shirt that said I am the rebel spy
I
because
love
I was
that.
so ecstatic. I was like, oh my god, I love Star Tours. I love, oh gosh, what are my favorite rides?
Well, the theme park too, like
Storybook Lands. Oh my
oh
god.
yeah. That is
because I
cute.
love the miniatures.
Oh my god, yes. Well, you know what I was gonna say too about like the star, like if you want to go do all the Star Wars rides and stuff like that, that part of the theme park is nice. Like I think the food is the best there, the bathroom is the best there. It's newer part of the theme park, so like
Galaxy's
if
Edge is where it's
yeah,
at.
yes, like so any tip you guys, please go to that part because the bathroom. What I like about the bathroom there is that the sinks and everything is just like you can use the water and actually have it running to wash your hands and not keep pressing the button.
And there's a lot
um.
of family bathrooms that block, and
Hmm.
yeah, there
Just a
it's
better.
much better experience.
Yeah, yeah, much better experience. So you guys should go there.
hmm
There's no
hmm
spooky anything if you guys avoid that. I want to avoid that.
Exactly. Nothing
Uh,
spooky in Galaxy's Edge. Good
nothing,
food, good rides,
everything. Yeah.
everything. It's a whole experience. And it also they have that whole technology where like where you walk through, like you can't hear any of like the outside world. Like you can't even hear a plane going over because they basically have some kind of technology that blocks all the sound out. So
Oh
it's
my
like you're
God.
stepping, yeah, it's like you're stepping into another world. So that's why you only hear like the sounds of Galaxy's Edge, so that you
No
can have that
wonder.
kind.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm like, why do I feel like every time I go in there, I'm like, oh, it feels so good here. And now,
it feels transported. You're transported. Yeah, because they block out the sound. And how they do it, some voodoo magic, but they did it so that
yeah.
you can like only hear, you know, X
They
wings and things flying over and things like that.
interesting. Okay. No, I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
have to put that. I have to note that down. But no, thank you. So I'm going to wrap it up here because I feel like this is a good end to all the
Yeah,
fun, spooky things that we touched
so
base
many
on.
spooky things.
But what are things coming up before we do the sign off though? What are things that you're going to be working on or you're excited to work on that you want to share with us?
Right now I'm doing a few projects with a few brands that I can't talk about at the
Mm.
moment, but I have a lot of fun content coming out. We're already starting to work on Halloween. We do Halloween costumes every year. I make any kind of costumes you can think of. Last year we made the McDonald's Halloween buckets costumes.
Oh,
So tons of Halloween because it's summer rain, as we call it.
somewhere, yeah.
Everybody, summer rain is in full effect. So I'm already starting to like get all the spooky vibes going. So we've got Halloween season coming up, and it comes earlier and earlier. So earlier
I
and earlier,
know.
Halloween.
What is
Halloween's already out in the stores, so we're already getting up for Halloween and all those fun things that are coming up all the holiday season.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you do DIYs and stuff like that too on your page. So
Tons of
yeah,
DIYs, recipes, all that stuff.
yeah, so if you guys want to get into the holiday season coming up, literally around the corner, you guys need to check
hmm
out Vanessa and her page. Seriously. Uh,
Thank you.
yeah, but where can people find you?
You can find me at brightandbubbly.com or at brightandbubbly at all social media.
Yeah, yeah, I'll
And
put it
bright
all in
with
the.
a Brite, like rainbow bright.
I love that. Oh my God, I haven't heard that forever. Yes, yes.
Yes.
I'll add all that information in the description. But it was I'm so happy that you were on. You had so many
Me
good
too.
stories.
So many stories. I got plenty more, girl.
Well, yeah, yeah, we'll have you come back on and do more spooky stuff around Halloween. But
Definitely. Definitely. I would love to.
oh, thank you. So remember, everybody, stay strange.
Stay strange.
Woo!